Have you ever wondered what would happen if you couldn't rely on your children or a pension in your old age? Imagine finding yourself alone, with no financial security and no one to depend on. What would you do? This is the reality that many seniors face, and it's a tough one. But there is a way to navigate this challenge. And today, we're sharing the story of Aunt Fong, a 60-year-old woman who faced these struggles head-on and found a way to live her later years with dignity, independence, and peace of mind. In this video, we'll explore her journey, the hard choices she made, and how she managed to turn her life around when everyone else gave up on her. You'll learn how to avoid common pitfalls that can trap seniors in dependency and discover powerful lessons on financial independence and self-reliance that can help you or your loved ones live a worry-free life as you grow older. By the end of this video, you'll understand the importance of not relying on anyone but yourself in your golden years, and you'll be empowered to take charge of your future. Stay tuned to hear about the practical steps you can take today to ensure your old age is not defined by struggle but by freedom and self-sufficiency. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. I am 60 years old this year, and my life has been one of simplicity and hard work, living in the peaceful but often harsh countryside. The years here are slow and predictable, but 20 years ago, my world was turned upside down by a tragedy that left me questioning everything I believed about fairness, justice, and survival. It was an ordinary day when I received the news. My husband, my partner, my support, and the backbone of our small family was gone. He had been working at a construction site when an accident claimed his life. The details were blurry, as if my mind refused to absorb them fully. I only remember the crushing weight of those words, like the air had been pulled out of my lungs. My husband had always been a hard worker, someone who took pride in providing for our family, no matter how difficult the job or how meager the pay. But his life was cut short, and with it, the stability of our future. A few days after the funeral, the boss of the construction site visited me. He came with an expression that I couldn't read. Was it guilt, pity, or simply fear of what might happen next? He handed me 300,000 yuan and said it was all he could manage. He explained that if I wanted more compensation, I would have to sue him, but even then, there was no guarantee I would get anything. The construction site is not making money, he said. I'm already drowning in debt. Even if I sold everything I owned, I couldn't gather more than this. He paused before adding, if you don't accept this money, I might have to declare bankruptcy, and then you'll be left with nothing. The words echoed in my mind. I knew he wasn't lying. My husband had often come home from the site complaining about delayed wages. Sometimes months would pass without payment. It was an ongoing struggle, but we had always hoped it would get better. Now, looking at the money in front of me, I realized the harsh truth. If the boss couldn't even pay his workers on time, how could he possibly afford a larger settlement? A legal battle might stretch on for years, draining what little energy and resources I had left, only to result in nothing. I sat there, staring at the envelope, feeling torn apart inside. How could I put a price on my husband's life? How could this small stack of bills represent the man who had sacrificed so much for us, who had been my partner in every sense of the word? But I was a mother, and my son's future depended on the choices I made. I couldn't gamble on a lawsuit that might leave us with nothing. So, with tears in my eyes and a heavy heart, I accepted the money and signed the consent form. It felt like I was signing away a piece of my soul, but I had no other choice. The days and months that followed were some of the darkest of my life. My husband had been our family's foundation, the one who carried the heavier burdens so I could focus on farming and taking care of our son. With him gone, I felt like a ship adrift in a storm, with no anchor to hold me steady. The 300,000 yuan was supposed to be a lifeline, but instead, it became a source of constant worry. I didn't dare spend it. Every time I looked at it, I thought about how quickly it could disappear. What would happen to us when it was gone? Our son, who was just 18 years old at the time, saw how the weight of this loss was crushing me. He was at a crossroads in his own life, having just taken the college entrance exam. His results weren't good, so poor that he didn't even qualify for a junior college. I had always dreamed that he would go further in life than his father and I had, that education would open doors for him that had always been closed to us. But now, those dreams felt out of reach, and our reality demanded immediate action. One evening, my son came to me with a determined look on his face. He told me he wanted to go to the city to work and earn money to help support the family. His words filled me with both pride and heartbreak. I wanted to protect him, to keep him home where he would be safe, but I also knew that our circumstances left little room for sentimentality. He saw my hesitation and said, "Mom, I'm not good at studying anyway. Even if I stayed here, what future would I have? Let me go and help." Those words hit me like a knife to the heart. No mother wants to hear her child give up on education, on dreams, on a chance for a better life. But I couldn't argue with his logic. He was right. What future could he have here, in a village where opportunities were scarce and survival was a daily struggle? So, with tears in my eyes, I gave him my blessing to leave. Watching him pack his belongings was one of the hardest moments of my life. He was just a boy, but he carried himself like a man, ready to take on the weight of the world for our family. As he boarded the bus to the city, I prayed silently that he would find kindness, opportunities, and safety in the unknown. I also prayed that he wouldn't lose himself in the harsh realities of the outside world and that he would remember the values we had tried to instill in him. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Life after that was a blur of quiet struggles and small victories. The money sat untouched for as long as I could manage, but eventually I had to dip into it for essentials. Each time I spent even a little, I felt a pang of guilt and fear. How long would it last? What would happen if an emergency arose? These thoughts haunted me day and night. Even now, 20 years later, I wonder if I made the right choices. Should I have fought harder for justice? Should I have kept my son at home and found another way? These questions linger in the back of my mind, but I remind myself that I did what I thought was best at the time. Life doesn't give us easy answers. It only gives us challenges and the strength to face them as best we can. Looking back, I realize that survival often demands sacrifices we never imagined making. But through it all, I have learned to find strength in my love for my family, in the memories of my husband, and in the hope that my son's sacrifices will pave the way for a brighter future. Life is not fair, but it is precious, and I have come to cherish even the smallest moments of peace and gratitude amidst the hardships. Before my son left for the city, I handed him 10,000 yuan. It wasn't a casual gesture, it was a deliberate act of love and responsibility. I held the money tightly for a moment before passing it to him, emphasizing that this was not to be spent lightly. Only use it in an emergency, I told him firmly, hoping he understood the weight of those words. As he nodded, I felt a mixture of emotions: pride that he was setting out on his own, worry for the challenges he might face, and a faint but persistent sadness at seeing him leave. Watching him walk away with his bag over his shoulder and the money tucked into his pocket, I stood at the gate of our modest rural home, feeling both hope and unease. It wasn't long before I received a phone call from him. His voice was filled with excitement as he told me he had found a job as a car mechanic in the city. "Mom, I'll be earning 3,000 yuan a month," he said, his words brimming with pride. "And once I learn all the skills, my salary could double." My heart swelled with joy hearing this. For a moment, I could picture him standing confidently in a garage, working hard, and building a life for himself. It was every parent's dream to see their child find stability, and I encouraged him wholeheartedly. "Work hard, my son," I told him, my voice filled with both love and hope. "Learn everything you can, and don't give up halfway." That evening, I sat by the window, feeling a rare sense of relief that perhaps everything was falling into place. But life, as it often does, had other plans. A few weeks later, my son called again, and this time, the tone of his voice was different. Hesitant, almost nervous. He began by talking about the cost of living in the city, explaining how difficult it was to save money while paying rent. "The landlord takes 1,000 yuan every month, Mom. That's a third of my salary," he said, his frustration evident. "By the time I cover food and other expenses, I have nothing left." Then came the request that made my heart skip a beat. He wanted to buy a house. He asked me to use the compensation money left by my late husband to help him make this dream a reality. His reasoning seemed logical. Instead of giving money to the landlord every month, I could use it to pay off a mortgage. At least the house would be mine in the end, something I can build my future on. He painted a picture of financial independence, of no longer wasting money on rent, and it was hard to argue with his logic. Yet, as he spoke, my chest tightened with anxiety. That compensation money was my lifeline, the only security I had as a widow with no pension. It was all I had to rely on for the years ahead. If I gave it away, what would be left for me? The thought of living in poverty, with no safety net, haunted me. I voiced my fears to him, trying to make him understand. "Son," I said softly, "I am getting older. Your father is gone, and this money is the only thing I have to support myself in the future. If I give it to you, what will I do if I fall ill or can't take care of myself anymore?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line before he replied. His voice was filled with conviction, and he said, "Mom, don't worry. Once I've mastered my skills and my salary doubles, I'll take care of you. I'll bring you to the city to live with me, and you won't have to worry about anything. I'll support you for the rest of your life." His words were like a warm embrace, filling me with both hope and fear. The thought of living in the city, of escaping the isolation of rural life, was like a dream I had never dared to entertain. I imagined myself in a modern apartment, surrounded by the conveniences I had only seen on television, and for a brief moment, my heart blossomed with happiness. I wanted to believe in his promise, to trust that he would take care of me as he said. After a night of sleepless contemplation, I made my decision. I transferred the entire 290,000 yuan to him, emptying the account that had been my safety net. When I hit the send button on the transfer, my hands trembled, but I tried to silence the doubts in my mind. This was for my son, I told myself. He was my future, and I had to believe in him. With the money, my son secured a loan and purchased a 3-bedroom apartment in the city. When he called to tell me, I could hear the pride in his voice. "It's ours, Mom," he said, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of pride too. But then he admitted that there was no money left for decoration, so he would have to live in the unfinished apartment for now. "It's okay," he said with optimism. "I'll save up and decorate it later." His resilience and determination moved me, but deep inside, a tiny voice of doubt lingered. What if things didn't go as planned? What if he struggled to pay the mortgage, or if his promises to take care of me remained just words? Now, as the days pass, I find myself torn between hope and fear. I want to believe in my son's dreams, and in his ability to build a better life for himself and me. But late at night, when the house is quiet, the weight of my decision bears down on me. Did I do the right thing? Should I have held onto the money that was meant to secure my future? Or did I make the ultimate sacrifice for my son, trusting in the unbreakable bond between a parent and child? For now, all I can do is wait. Wait to see if my son's promises come true. Wait to see if the seeds of hope I planted in his future will bear fruit. And as I wait, I pray, Pray that I made the right choice. Pray that my son will find the success he dreams of. And pray that in the end, love and family will prove stronger than fear and doubt. Although I was living in the quiet embrace of the countryside, where opportunities to earn money were scarce, I never let that deter me from supporting my son's dreams. I rolled up my sleeves and poured every ounce of effort into raising chickens, ducks, and even 2 sturdy pigs. My days were filled with the hum of life on the farm, tending to these animals with a blend of determination and maternal hope. When the year came to a close, I sold every last one of them. The money I earned, several thousand yuan, was a hard-earned treasure, the result of countless early mornings and tireless work. When my son came home for the new year, I handed the money over to him without hesitation. My voice carried both urgency and care as I told him, "Use this to start decorating the house. Living in that unfinished apartment isn't good for you. It's so inconvenient." My heart was heavy with concern, wanting to ease his struggles, even if it meant sacrificing my own comfort. But my son, ever ambitious, replied that decorating a house wasn't something to be done half-heartedly. He spoke of wanting it to be done perfectly, so there'd be no regrets later. "If the decoration isn't right and we want to redo it, it will be a huge waste," he said firmly. I felt a pang of helplessness as I asked him how much money we would need to make it perfect. His answer, 150,000 yuan, felt like a thunderbolt. My chest tightened as I quietly did the math in my head. That kind of money felt like an impossible mountain to climb. My voice trembled as I tried to reason with him. "Son, we're not city people. Our family doesn't have the means to live like that. We should be practical, not chase after a lifestyle that isn't ours." But my son's spirit was unyielding. "I don't believe in luck, Mom," he said. "I believe in hard work. If we set a goal and work toward it, we'll get there." His words carried a stubborn hope that both inspired and worried me. I didn't want to extinguish his dreams, so I bit back my fears and resolved to keep supporting him. If he believed, then I would too. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye, and despite our relentless efforts, the elusive 150,000 yuan still felt like a distant dream. During that new year, my son came home with a surprise, a young woman he introduced as his girlfriend. Her appearance struck me immediately. She was elegant, with the polished look of someone accustomed to city life and luxury. But as I greeted her, her eyes, cool and dismissive, left me feeling small and out of place. It was as if she saw right through me, judging my humble ways and modest home. My heart ached with a mix of discomfort and worry. Later, my son told me that this girl came from a wealthy family. "Mom," he said, "if we get married, her family will help with the decoration costs. For them, 150,000 yuan is nothing." His words should have brought relief, but instead, they filled me with unease. Would this girl, with her noble air and disdainful eyes, truly make my son happy? Would she understand the value of the sacrifices we'd made to build this life? I couldn't shake the weight in my heart. I had given my all to support my son's dreams, but now I wondered if the road he was choosing would lead to true happiness, or just another set of struggles in disguise. Life, I've learned, isn't just about achieving a goal. It's about cherishing the journey, the sacrifices, and the bonds that carry us forward. And yet, as a mother, all I could do was hope that my son's dreams would lead him to a better future, even if it meant letting go of my fears and trusting his choices. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Although I always had reservations and a deep sense of unease about the situation, I knew my son well enough to understand that once he set his mind on something, there was little I could say to change it. He had always been determined and unwavering in his decisions, even when I felt they were misguided. As much as it hurt, I chose to remain silent. What else could I do? My words, I feared, would only push him further away. So I listened quietly, swallowing my worries, hoping against hope that his choices would lead to happiness, even if they didn't align with my instincts. One day, he called me with news that both surprised and unsettled me. The house he had been talking about for so long had finally started being decorated, and to my surprise, all the costs were covered by his girlfriend's family. I tried to convince myself that this was a generous gesture from her side, a sign of their support for the couple's future. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that this meant I would have even less of a say in my son's life going forward. Before I had time to process it all, they announced their marriage plans. Everything moved so quickly that it felt like I was merely a bystander in my son's life, watching from a distance as he embarked on a new chapter. On the day of their wedding, I arrived with a mixture of emotions: pride, hope, and an underlying sadness I couldn't quite explain. This was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life, yet as I stepped into the hall, I was struck by how out of place I felt. Instead of being greeted warmly and celebrated as the groom's mother, I was quietly ushered to a seat in the far corner, where no one seemed to notice me. The wedding proceeded with all the grandeur one could imagine, filled with laughter, music, and joy. But for me, every moment felt hollow. From the beginning to the end, not a single person acknowledged me as the groom's mother. I sat there, invisible, my heart aching with a loneliness I hadn't anticipated. After the ceremony, my son must have noticed the sadness in my eyes. He tried to comfort me, saying, "Mom, our family isn't wealthy, and sometimes we have to accept situations like this. But don't worry. Once I succeed in life, I promise I'll make you proud." His words carried the weight of hope, but they also underscored a painful truth. Our poverty had made me feel small and insignificant. Still, I chose to hold on to his promise as if it were a lifeline. What other choice did I have? I had no husband to share my burdens, no wealth to fall back on, and no other family to lean on. My entire world revolved around my son. My entire reason for enduring life's hardships was so that he could have a better future. Even after his marriage, I refused to let go of my role as his mother. I wanted to support him in every way possible, even if it meant sacrificing my comfort. My son had started working in the city, and his salary had doubled, but I knew that city life came with its challenges and expenses. I didn't want to be an additional burden on him or his new wife. Back home, I relied on the small plot of land to sustain myself. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep me fed. I also sold eggs whenever I could, saving up every little bit of money. Whenever I made a small profit, I sent it to my son. I imagined him using the money to make his life a little easier or to bring a smile to his wife's face. It gave me a sense of purpose, even if it meant going without certain comforts myself. But life, as it often does, had other plans. After his marriage, my son started to grow distant. At first, the change was subtle. Calls became less frequent, and our conversations grew shorter. I told myself it was natural. He was adjusting to married life, juggling work, and navigating new responsibilities. I didn't want to seem clingy or demanding, so I gave him space. But as weeks turned into months, the silence became harder to ignore. When I called him, the phone would ring endlessly without an answer. On the rare occasions he did pick up, his tone was rushed, his words brief. Then one day, the most heartbreaking news reached me, not for my son, but through others. I learned that my daughter-in-law had given birth to a daughter, my granddaughter, my flesh and blood, and yet no one had thought to tell me. I felt a pain so deep it took my breath away. I had imagined being there for such a moment, holding my granddaughter in my arms, sharing in their joy. Instead, I was left in the dark, as if my existence no longer mattered. I replayed the moments in my mind, wondering where I had gone wrong. Had I given too much? Had my sacrifices been taken for granted? Every egg I sold, every penny I saved, every prayer I whispered for their happiness, it all felt meaningless now. My heart was heavy with an unbearable sadness, a loneliness that no words could capture. My son, The boy I had nurtured and loved with every fiber of my being had become a stranger. The distance between us wasn't just physical, it was emotional, a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. In the quiet of my small home, I often sat and wondered if he thought of me at all. Did he remember the nights I stayed awake, worrying about his future? Did he remember the sacrifices I made, the dreams I gave up, so he could have his? The pain of being forgotten by the one person I had devoted my life to was almost too much to bear. But even in the depths of my sorrow, I clung to a sliver of hope, that one day he would remember. That one day, he would see me not as a burden, but as the mother who had loved him unconditionally, even when it meant losing herself in the process. When I decided to call my son that day, I was filled with hope, wanting to hear his voice and share a little about my life, as mothers do. But the moment his wife picked up the phone, something inside me told me that the conversation was not going to be pleasant. Her tone was brisk, almost impatient, as she told me that my son was busy with work and couldn't come to the phone. I had no reason to doubt that he was busy. He's a hard-working man after all, but what she said next shocked me to my core. She told me flatly that I should stop calling my son in the future because he was too busy to be bothered. I was taken aback. Stop calling? The thought hit me like a slap across the face. Was I now just an inconvenience to my child? Before I could fully process her words, she continued, saying that instead of calling, I should think about coming to the city to help take care of my granddaughter. Her words were not a request. They were a demand, spoken as though I were a hired hand, not a mother or a grandmother deserving of respect. For a moment, I couldn't even speak. I was frozen in disbelief. I had always suspected that my daughter-in-law didn't hold me in high regard, but this was something entirely different. This wasn't just disrespect, it was entitlement. It was as though she saw me not as a person with my own life and needs, but as someone who existed solely to serve their family. My heart ached, and I felt a knot of anger rising in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. I told her as gently as I could that I was getting older and my health wasn't what it used to be. I explained that taking care of a young child was something I couldn't manage anymore. In my mind, I thought this would be enough. Surely, she would understand that I wasn't physically up to the task. But instead of showing even a shred of compassion, she coldly dismissed my concerns. "Since you're getting old," she said, her voice as sharp as a blade, "you'll need to rely on your son for support in your old age. And because of that, you'll need to listen to me." Her words hit me like a tidal wave, sweeping away what little composure I had left. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Was she telling me that because I might need my son's help in the future, I was obligated to follow her orders now? The arrogance, the lack of empathy, the sheer audacity of it, it was too much. My hands trembled with frustration as I clutched the phone. I felt humiliated and diminished, as if my years of raising my son, loving him, and sacrificing for him meant nothing. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. I couldn't take it anymore. Without saying another word, I hung up the phone. My heart was pounding, my chest felt tight, and tears stung my eyes. I sat there in silence, the weight of her words pressing down on me. I felt betrayed, not just by her, but by the realization that my son, my flesh and blood, had allowed this kind of dynamic to take root. He hadn't stopped her. He hadn't intervened. And that silence spoke volumes. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I couldn't live like this. I couldn't spend my remaining years hoping for care and compassion from people who saw me as a burden. The world might tell us that children should take care of their parents in old age, but what happens when those children don't want to? What happens when they see their parents as nothing more than a responsibility or, worse, an inconvenience? I realized I had been holding onto a dangerous hope, a hope that my son and his family would be there for me when I needed them. But that hope was a fantasy, and clinging to it would only leave me more hurt and vulnerable. I had to face the truth, no matter how much it pained me. They didn't see me as a person with feelings and dignity. They saw me as someone they could use, someone who should obey. That day, I made a decision that changed everything. I would no longer rely on my son or anyone else for my future. If I wanted security and peace in my old age, I would have to create it myself. I started to think about what that meant. It wasn't just about financial independence, though that was part of it. It was also about emotional independence, about building a life that didn't revolve around waiting for scraps of affection or respect from people who had none to give. I resolved to take care of myself, to plan for my own needs so I wouldn't have to depend on anyone else. It was a painful decision, but it was also freeing. I began to see my old age not as a period of decline, but as a time when I could focus on myself for once. I wouldn't let anyone dictate my worth or my role. I had spent my life caring for others, raising my son and supporting my family, and now it was time to care for myself. Looking back, I feel a deep sense of sadness for the relationship I wish I had with my son and his family. But I also feel a sense of pride. I took control of my life and my future, and I refused to let anyone strip me of my dignity. Old age is not a time to surrender yourself to others' demands. It's a time to reclaim your independence, to protect your peace, and to live life on your terms. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: you can't rely on anyone else to make your happiness. That's something you have to create for yourself. Life has a way of teaching us lessons in the most unexpected moments. What I've shared today isn't just my story. It's a reflection of the challenges many of us face as we grow older. So, what about you? What have you learned from this story? Have you ever experienced something similar, or is there a lesson here that resonates deeply with you? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share in the comments below one thing you've learned from this video and how you plan to bring it into practice in your own life. Let's create a space where we can all learn from and support one another. If you liked this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more stories and advice on living a full and independent life. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.